Time travel. It's something that we've all fantasized about, wondering what you would change or where you would go. Dinosaurs or future dynasties. But what if it's not just a fantasy? There have been countless people throughout history claiming to be time travelers, some more convincing than others, with proof of sunken cities, future wars, and unknown technology. So here are the top 10 time travel stories that defy science. Do you have any time travel stories? Leave them in the comments down below. Number 10. John Titor. In November of 2000, there was a huge uptick in activity on the Time Travel Institute forums, which is still a website with some interesting reading material. In between all of the crackpot theories was a group of posts that seemed a bit too detailed to ignore. A man named John Titor was posting, and he claimed to be from the year 2036, and was sent back in time by his government to the year 1975 to retrieve an old IBM computer. They needed it for some debugging back in his home time. But as a little time vacation, he decided to stop off in the year 2000 for some fun. The posts on the forum detailed the technology he used to travel, along with future events like a US Civil War in 2012 and a Third World War in 2015. Obviously, none of this happened, but his posts were so convincing and full of things that could have been possible, or could have worked in theory, that it may have been true, but just by revealing the information, he changed the timeline. We can't disprove any of the things he said, and no one has heard from him since. Number 9. Hipster Time Traveler. In 1941, the South Fork Bridge was reopened in Goldbridge, BC, Canada. This photo was snapped to commemorate the event, and everyone out there seems to be dressed in their Sunday best, and no one paid any mind to it at all. But when it was uploaded to be part of the Virtual Museum of Canada, users found something odd, and it spread across the net like wildfire. In the back row of people, there's a man dressed in what one may now call hipster attire. Sunnies and a graphic tee under a textured cardigan, and he even has the I couldn't care less hairstyle to go along with it. Some think he's from the future and inadvertently walked into the frame of this shot, and others think he's just some guy from the 40s who didn't get the dress code memo. Number 8. Future photograph. A man named Edward claimed that in 2004, while living in LA and working in a lab, he was given the opportunity of a lifetime to be sent forward in time 3,000 years and come back with evidence to prove it. A massive achievement for the human species. He claimed in a 2018 interview that when he was sent forward, he was still in Los Angeles, but something was different. He was on a large wooden platform, and everything, all of the buildings and everything around him was made of wood, and water stretched out as far as the eye could see. When he looked down, he saw the remnants of LA under the water. He claimed that climate change had destroyed the planet and water levels had risen to devour the entire city, and he has a photograph to prove it. I'm not sure if I believe that the photograph is real, but I think that the idea of LA being underwater due to climate change is totally plausible and very frightening. Number 7. Back to the 40s. In 1988, Strange Magazine 2 published the account of a man named LC who claimed that back in the summer of '69, he and his business partner were driving through Louisiana, and out of nowhere the weather changed completely. Then ahead of them appeared an old car, a 40s turtleback, going extremely slow. The car had an orange license plate with 1940 written on it, and what is even stranger is that antique cars like that weren't allowed on the road unless it was for a ceremonial parade. It was moving so slow that they thought something may be wrong, so they pulled up beside it and saw that the driver and her child were wearing clothing from the 40s as well. Once they gestured for her to pull over, the car vanished, right in front of their eyes. Another eyewitness also corroborated the story. Now the question is, who was the time traveler, LC or the woman in the car? Number 6. Mary Antoinette. In 1901, 2 professors from St. Hugh's College in Oxford traveled to the Palace of Versailles, where one of the last French royals, Marie Antoinette, lived until she was executed in 1793. They were walking the grounds when the two of them both reported seeing many people, including Antoinette herself, in 1780s attire walking the grounds. The area they were in was a small retreat built in the garden by Louis XVI for Marie as a gift, so there is a reason to expect seeing her there, though it would be incredibly shocking. Both of them claimed to see the same thing, and all of the apparitions appeared as soon as the tour guide came back to the area. Very strange indeed. Number 5. Air raid warning. J. Bernard Hutton and Joachim Brandt were journalists visiting the Hamburg shipyard in 1932. It was by all accounts an uneventful day of photographs and interviews. Then, suddenly, bombs and gunfire fell from the sky. There were explosions, and the anti-air guns began to fire back with deafening booms. They took photos of the planes in the sky and the guns firing back as they escaped. And when they got back to the city, no one believed their story. They thought the photos would convince everyone, but once they were developed, there was no war zone to be seen. But 11 years later, on the same day they had visited, the British conducted Operation Gomorrah, a raid on the Hamburg airbase, and the photos from that look exactly like what the two men had described. Too bad the other pictures didn't develop so we could compare them. Did they see the war early? I guess we'll never know. Number 4. The Montauk Project. Preston Nichols writes in his book that at Montauk Air Force Base on Long Island, dangerous experiments involving time travel were being conducted, and that he uncovered repressed memories of the experiments in the 80s. His book later became the inspiration to Stranger Things, as he claims that young people with psychic abilities were experimented on and exploited to use their powers to open portals and gateways into different times, one of which being to 1943 on the USS Eldridge, where the Philadelphia experiment allegedly took place. The goal of that was to make their ships invisible, and apparently it worked, but the ship was also sent 10 minutes back in time and the crew went mad. The fact that these two projects linked together seems to show that there was something special about the two experiments. Perhaps time travel attracts more time travel like a magnet. Maybe they'll explain it in season 5 of Stranger Things. Number 3. The Man from Taured. In 1954 in Tokyo, Japan, a man was stopped while going through customs for missing something on his form. When he was being questioned, the immigration officers looked at his passport and everything seemed to be on the up and up, except that the country of origin didn't exist. The man claimed to be from a country called Taured, and he had the passport stamps to prove it too. He said that it was between France and Spain, and he got increasingly more aggressive every time he was told it didn't exist. Why would somebody say that his home country didn't exist? When asked to point on a map to where his home country was, he pointed to what is now known as Andorra, but insisted that it was Taured. They locked him up overnight to continue questioning the next day, but when they went to look for him in the morning, he was nowhere to be found. Perhaps he managed to find a way back to his own timeline. Number 2. Andrew Carlssin. In 2003, Andrew Carlssin was arrested for insider trading. Over a 2-week period, he had turned $800 into $350 million. It is impossible to make that kind of money without having some sort of inside knowledge. He claimed it was because he was from the year 2256 and came back to make money. He made all sorts of predictions, not just ones for his investments. He also correctly predicted the exact date of the US-Iraq invasion. Soon after he was released on bail, he disappeared, never to be seen again. This one actually seems like something someone with a time machine would do: squander it on making money. Number 1. Victor Goddard. In 1935, Airman Victor Goddard was sent to inspect an abandoned airfield in Edinburgh. As he flew over, he noted its run-down, dilapidated state and that it was deserted. But on his way back, the weather changed drastically. There was heavy cloud cover and rain, but just as quickly as it came, it cleared again. And down on the airfield, he saw people in blue mechanic suits running around, working on yellow planes that he couldn't identify, and as a decorated airman, he knew his planes. It wasn't until 4 years later that he went back to the airfield to see people in blue mechanic suits working on the yellow planes he saw on the runway years before. Miles Magisters, which were not even manufactured until 1938. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Connor, stay amazing, and I'll see you next time.